Well, good afternoon. I'm Father David. Thank you for joining me today for Disciple Time as we're continuing in our resolution keeper focus. And today, our particular theme is persevering in our resolutions. So, this past Sunday, I shared how I persevered for 3 years in my resolution to become a fly fisherman. And anyone who knows me knows how that persistent effort has blossomed in my life. But what about the resolution to love? So, what I'm finding is that it seems like it's a lot easier to work on stuff like fly fishing than it is to be more loving. Or is it, right? Because, see, when I first thought about this, I thought the easy thing about fly fishing is it's pretty straightforward. You get the materials to tie a fly, you match the fly to the hatch size of the insect that the fish are eating, you match up the right leader line with the hook size, and then you start casting and adjusting as the fish respond. And you know what? When I first started, it took me like a year to catch my first fish. So obviously, it wasn't that straightforward. And I ended up learning a lot of skills in the process. So it kind of stands to reason that becoming more loving is going to be a similar long term kind of commitment. And if I follow my fly fishing tactics, then I need to consider like times of preparing. Like what supplies do I need to be more loving? In fishing, you go to the river, you scout what the fish are eating. You can do that by pulling up a rock and checking what kind of bugs are under there. How about love though? What does my family need in terms of love? What does my spouse need in terms of love? What do I need in terms of love? And what does God need from me in terms of love? And so doing some recon, right, in my community, in my circles, like I would at the river, that might tell me how to kind of shape my love and how to offer it. And hey, I mean, I may spend the next year dialing that in when it comes to love and what people really need and what fills their particular love tank. But that's okay. I don't have to be an expert at this overnight. It took me 12 months, literally, to start tying those really tiny little zebra midges that were small enough that the trout at the Fall River would even give them a second look. And then I had to dial in how I was tying them. And you know what? As I learn more about how to be more loving, it may take 12 months, it may take 3 years, I don't know, to figure out just the right way to offer that love, how to package my love like Jesus, kind of in a palatable way. And sometimes you can't go ahead on with love. There's people's feelings, there's environments to think about, and it's kind of like casting the fly line, right? It needs to land upstream and then kind of drift by, looking like just another bug. And that means similarly, sometimes our compassion won't be straightforward and head on and meeting people right there. Sometimes it needs to come in kind of like at an angle, like you would casting your fly. And the point is, it's okay if it takes a few years to get there, but hopefully, right, after a couple years looking back at it, I'll be able to see some noticeable improvements. And the fact is, I can trust that with God's help and some perseverance, being more loving will actually be possible, and I think it's going to be worth it. Why? Because God is love, and guess what the readings say today? Well, it tells us in Genesis 1, verses 26 to 27, then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and the cattle, and over all the wild animals, and all the creatures that crawl on the ground. God created man in his image. In the divine image, he created him. So It stands to reason that if I'm created in God's image after his likeness, and if God is love, then my biggest effort simply needs to be aligning myself with who God created me to be. And that is a loving, compassionate person being comprised of both matter and spirit who works with God, right? I mean, if I could just strip away the noise and all the stuff my own ego and the world have added since I've been born and just be the loving being aligned with God's love and humble mercy, if I could just do that, right? I would be seeing massive results. And in fact, the more I look at my life, the more I see it's not God's spirit that's making it difficult for me to be more loving. It's the war between my false self and my authentic self. And authentically, I want to love. But the ego, convinced of its separateness from God and other, kind of gets caught up in its own identity to the point of forgetting about that mandate to love at all times, and then it gets really self-focused. And so we have it on our lips to do one thing, as Paul says, but then we do another. And it's like it says in the gospel reading from Mark today, actually. So in Mark 7:6-7, we read this. He responded, "Well did Isaiah prophesy about you hypocrites, as it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines human precepts." Well, I don't want to leave this resolution to be more loving in the realm of hypocritical hypotheticalism, right? To make up some words, where I think one thing but do another. So we need to persevere in our resolutions, trusting that we are in fact created in God's image, and that means we are very much created to love, to be compassionate, to be forgiving and merciful and fair, because God is love, which means that we are all capable of moving towards more perfection in our love. And so that's my resolution to do that. So what's the application today? It's this: Lord, help me by your grace to be what you have called me to be, an agent of love. Well, thank you for joining me today for Disciple Time. We will see you around.